Hello everyone, welcome to the Sack Race Reacts. Today we are talking Charlton. We've got Charlton fan and commentator for the Valley Pass, Greg Stubley. Greg, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, Jack. Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me on.
I imagine it's been quite hectic. First of all, where can people find you on Twitter?
So my Twitter is at Greg Stubley 3. If you're not a Charlton fan, be prepared for a lot of Charlton stuff. But in general as well, at Valley_Pass for all things Valley Pass. If you want to have a look at our stuff on a match day, got some new features and Scott Minto presenting Curbishley, and so it might even appeal if you're not a Charlton fan. So worth checking out.
Fantastic. Check that out tonight, especially Tuesday game against Bristol Rovers. Right, it's been a bit of a crazy 24 hours for you, I imagine. First of all, what are your thoughts on Lee Bowyer's resignation?
Yeah, a little bit surprised and a little bit not. I think it goes without saying that Lee's done an unbelievable job in such difficult circumstances over the last 3 years. I think it's a great shame that he never had that opportunity in the Championship to develop what was a really good team when we got promoted from League One. And then even with a little bit more help in the January transfer window last year, I'm confident we'd have stayed up. And I'm sure Lee would have continued to still be our manager. I think given the circumstances off the pitch towards the end of last season and even the beginning of this, where our future was in doubt, he had so much to work with. And if we're honest, he probably wanted to move then. He probably, and no one would have blamed him, because it was any manager, whether you're Guardiola or a non-league manager, would have struggled in those circumstances. And I think he reached a point, maybe even this season, where he just thought, you know what, I feel like I need a new challenge, and the club needs a new challenge. I think Thomas Sandgaard, our owner, coming in has made such a difference in terms of we've got stability. The relationship between the club and the fans has been fantastic since he's been in charge. And I think now it's come to a stage where the club doesn't want to be in League One and be okay in the Championship. It wants to develop and become more of a brand and more of a global team, which is the desire of any football club now. But to actually have someone backing that and putting things in place behind the scenes to get it to that standard, when you're a manager and have had to deal with everything before, it might be a little bit of transition for yourself to try and think, okay, well, my owner wants Premier League in 5 years, whereas before we were just happy to be alive as a football club. So I think he's had to take on a lot. And I think maybe at this stage with Charlton, maybe not even this season looking towards the Championship, because we're still a little bit off the playoffs, but Charlton now looking ahead to, not only can we get promoted from League One, can we then get promoted from the Championship? And maybe you need someone to come in with fresh ideas to make that happen.
It looks like he's off to Birmingham City in the Championship. Of course, we're waiting on confirmation on that one at the time of recording. But if we can just look ahead to your next manager, in as the early favourite is Johnnie Jackson, the assistant under Bowyer. You, of course, appointed Bowyer from within. Do you see the same thing happening here?
I mean, there's a chance. There's a real chance, because Johnny is, as you said, a club legend. But what also he is a really good coach and a really likable person. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but he is someone. Oh, pardon my dogs. He'll be someone who is trusted to be given that opportunity, because he's intelligent. He'll bring a bit of freshness. He will develop, and he's a young coach. And I think this sort of position does suit maybe more of a young coach who wants to develop and take Charlton further, rather than maybe an experienced pro coming back down the leagues and then trying to take Charlton back up. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the ambitions of the owner are, but Johnny would be someone who could fall into that category for sure. And as I said, he's a club legend, would have the backing of the fans and the staff, so it could happen.
Yeah, we've seen it quite often this season, especially in the EFL, clubs appointing from within, and especially given the timing, he could easily be in charge until the end of the season. If they choose to look elsewhere, we've got to mention Alan Curbishley. He's a sack race favourite. We've not seen him, I think, in about 12, 13 years since he left West Ham. So he must have left Charlton around 15 years ago. Any chance of this one happening, please?
I'll be very surprised. And the only reason I say that is because I think Alan's in a position where, I think if he got asked and said, do you want to come into the end of the season, I think he would. But I've got to know Alan a little bit doing Valley Pass, and he's a fantastic person, and he's obviously a club legend. But I think as well, he's probably aware that maybe he has been out of the game a little bit too long to come and manage. But there could be in the future, depending on who we bring in, an opportunity for him to come and do a technical or advisory role, which might suit him a little bit more. But I mean, I can't rule it out. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'd be very surprised if he was taken on. I think, as I said earlier, I think the role will suit someone maybe a little bit younger and wants to take Charlton forward. But who knows? Stranger things have happened.
From a sort of a similar angle, we've also got Chris Powell, who of course managed before, won your promotion. He's currently at Tottenham and England coaching there. He was linked with, I think it was AFC Wimbledon earlier on in the season, but nothing came to fruition there. Could he return to the Valley?
I mean, kind of again with the other two, really. I mean, there's nothing stopping him, and I'm sure he'd be considered because he has experience of taking Charlton up from League One. He is still a club legend. I think the difficulty for him is trying to justify, maybe to someone like Thomas Sandgaard, who's obviously only been in football recently. I think Thomas could look at his CV and go, well, since you left Charlton, you went to Huddersfield, you went to Southend, and while he didn't do a terrible job at either of those clubs, maybe Thomas might be wanting someone a little bit more ambitious. I don't know. I think that's the only thing that will go against Chris, because again, he's a club legend, did a fantastic job with us, and another one who deserved more with us. He deserves a better ownership. He deserved more help, and another one who might have, on another day, taken us to the Premier League had he had that help. But to start again with him would be a bit of a challenge, and I'm sure he's enjoying the job he's got at the moment. He's working for Spurs as a youth coach, I believe, and England's set up is probably a dream job for a lot of people. So. Maybe it would be a little bit of an ask to even get him in. But yeah, I can see why he's on the shortlist for sure.
And if your owner does show a little bit of ambition, arguably the star name in the frame came out of nowhere last night is his fellow Dane, Michael Laudrup. He's around the 5-1 mark at the moment. He's not been in football for around 2 years, but he's got a really good record. And he of course, in England or Wales led Swansea to League Cup glory. The reactions on Twitter has been quite positive. Are you a fan of him, and would you like to see him come in?
I mean, I like that Swansea team he had, and I think that's maybe where the fans have chipped in as well, because it was an enjoyable team and it was a memorable team. I mean, he led them to League Cup success, and for a team like Swansea to get that, you will of course look at the manager. I know it didn't end quite the way it wanted to there. I don't know if he's a genuine contender. I mean, I've obviously not heard anything, but if he is, I mean, as you say, it would be a bit of a coup because of his background, and of course, I think Sandgaard being Danish and being a football fan throughout his life, I mean, it's the equivalent of me in 20 years' time getting the opportunity to appoint someone like Wayne Rooney or something. That you do consider that, and it does take effect. But I think Sandgaard will also be looking at, okay, is this just a star name or is this a right fit? And if he brings him in, it won't just be because he's Danish and a brilliant name. It'll be because he'll fit into his philosophy, if that makes sense. So if it was to happen, it wouldn't be because of it being Michael Laudrup. It'd be because he's the right fit for the football club. But having that name does help a little bit.
I guess real ambition would be Chris Wilder. At the sack race, we went to see him last year when he was at Sheffield United, and he told us just how close he came to getting the Charlton job before Sheffield United in 2016. 5 years later, he's now left Sheffield United. Do you think this is a pipe dream, or could there be any chance of him coming to the Valley?
I mean, he'd probably be, if you said pluck a name out who is free and could come to the Valley, he'd be my number one choice. But as I said, that's a bit of a dream, in my opinion. I think the things people forget is that Chris Wilder, while he obviously managed at lower league before he went to the Premier League, is technically the most recent. Well, he's most recently a Premier League manager. So for him, in his eyes, he's like, well, I led the team to top half the Premier League last season, so I'm a Premier League manager. I think trying to justify it to bring someone down to League One, I mean, of course, money talks, and if we get the right offer, you definitely consider it. But if it doesn't go well, suddenly you're floating back in League One, potentially Championship. So that is a risk to take. I think if we're a Championship club, no question about it, I think we could I think we could attract a lot of big names because we are a sleeping giant in my eyes. I think you look at the infrastructure, the club, the fans, everything about it is a sleeping giant. But to take that risk and jump down to League One after you just managing the Premier League is a bit of an ask. But again, like, who knows? Like, Sandgaard is an optimist and he's a believer, and I buy into it. I love it. I think he's fantastic. And someone like Wilder, who's had difficult circumstances at Sheffield United, clearly likes the club, nearly very became our manager, might look at it and go, you know what, I know about this club. I know they're on the right track. I want to make that jump. I want to take that challenge. Who knows? But I think in an ideal world, I think that sort of person would be fantastic for the club.
Would be absolutely brilliant. Who knows? Johnnie Jackson could lead you up, and then Chris Wilder could come in the summer. Finally, one more name he's linked with every job. I've so repetitive saying it now, but Danny Cowley, the Cowley brothers, and rightly so, great managers. Could this be a sort of project they can invest themselves in?
I would be very surprised if they wouldn't be interested. I think the thing that goes against maybe Charlton in this respect is that there's a couple of jobs available. I know they've been heavily linked with the Portsmouth job, but if you look at their backgrounds, being from London way, I'm pretty sure Danny Cowley was graduated at Greenwich University, just down the road from Charlton. So he will be aware of what Charlton is to the community. He'll be aware of the structure of Charlton. So for them, it could be a bit of a dream job in that respect, being a bit more local, being an opportunity. And they're very much a duo that I see trying to buy into philosophies and that sort of side of football. I think, like I said, I think the thing that goes against them maybe is perhaps a lack of a little bit of experience in regards to managing a club like Charlton. I know that they managed Huddersfield, and of course they were a Premier League team, but some would argue, okay, they did an okay job there, but they didn't set the world alight. I personally think they just did a really good job in difficult circumstances. But I know from a Charlton fan's perspective, they're not the ideal pick, but again, like, we don't know what goes on in these interviews. They could present something that's completely on track and what we want to do and be a perfect fit. I think I would be surprised if they were the main pick, but then again, I wouldn't, because of their, as I said, their sort of commitment to football. The way they approach football is very they're very philosophy based, and I think that's what our owner's looking to do as well. He's not just trying to build a team that goes, okay, we can get League One playoffs. They're trying to build a team that can build a sort of legacy throughout the next decade or so, whenever he's in charge.
Before we finish off, I'm just going to run a few names past you to get your thoughts. We've got Michael Beale, the Rangers coach, doing a fantastic job there. Kenny Jackett, who's literally just left Portsmouth. Jason Yule, who I believe is already at Charlton at the under-23s, and also Neil Harris. Do any of them tickle your fancy?
Well, the Michael Beale one's the most interesting for me. I think out of every name, and with the exception of probably Chris Wilder because of potentially being a bit of a pipe dream, the Michael Beale one's the most interesting because I think it's the sort of manager I personally think will come in. I think it'll be someone who's not necessarily unknown, but a little bit of a wild card. I think it'll be someone who is a good coach and is good with developing players. And our owner's made it very clear he likes the Brentford model. That's the sort of appointment Brentford would have done a few years ago. So I'm trying to think about it like that. Who would be the person who would put the infrastructure in place, and maybe even the one who could take us to the Premier League? And maybe because of the situation we're in, where yes, we can still get players and we're not far off it, but maybe we want to use the rest of the season to help build for next season as a worst case scenario. And bringing in someone who's a little bit young and inexperienced will give them that opportunity to see what we can do the rest of the season, and then look ahead to next season and go, right, this is what we need for next season. This is the style of football we're going to play, etc. And Michael Beale, with his Charlton history, where he used to be in our academy, was local to the Valley, again, would make sense in that point of view. I think the club would like someone who knows Charlton and knows about its history. It's quite a unique club in that sense. So again, he ticks a lot of boxes. So I think he could be one to watch personally. And in regards to the others, I mean, problem with Kenny Jackett and Neil Harris is their Millwall connections. Not doubting their managerial abilities. I think Kenny I've always liked, and I think he's this season, and maybe under Portsmouth, if we're being honest, has probably underachieved in some respects. I think this season they've got a really good team, and I'd be surprised if someone who comes in doesn't take them at least into the playoffs still. And maybe Kenny could have done that had he finished this season off. But I get it. The fans have been a bit patient with him and want to progress and not seeing that. So I do understand that side as well. And then Neil Harris, who, I think he's too much of a Millwall legend. I think he'd be aware of that as well as the club. So I couldn't see that one happening.